Good morning, committee. Sorry for the delay. Good morning, committee, and welcome to members of the public joining us today, both in person and online. This is the 8th of February 2024 meeting of the Western and Southern Area Planning Committee, which is one of the 3 area-based planning committees of the Dorset Council. Our area remit covers the previous Weymouth and Portland Borough Council and most of the previous West Dorset District Council areas. The Planning Committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public are invited. All attendees must comply with the ruling of the Chair. They must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance or support. To support that, please switch off your phones, which the Chairman's just done. And leave them off for the duration of the meeting. Members of the public are allowed to record or film any part of the meeting. However, they should conform to the protocol for filming and audio recording of public council meetings and not distract the proceedings. Those filming should only focus upon those directly involved in the conduct of the meeting. The meeting is also being live streamed, and a copy of the recording will be available to view on the council website after the meeting. No fire alarm test is expected. If the fire alarm sounds, can all present leave the building as quickly as possible by way of the closest exit and follow the directions to the nearest assembly point away from the civic offices. Public amenities can be located in the foyer of County Hall adjacent to the entrance. Members of the public who have given advance notice of their wish to speak on an application will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. No material is to be circulated to members of the committee. For the benefit of the public, my name is Councillor David Shortell, Chairman of the Area Planning Committee, and my Vice Chairman is Councillor Jean Dunseth. Good morning, Jean.
Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning to you. To introduce other members of the committee, Councillor Dave Barwell, Councillor Kelvin Clayton. Good morning, Kelvin. Good morning, Chair. Councillor Susan Cocking. Good morning, Susan. Good morning to you. Councillor Nick Arling. Good morning, Nick. Good morning, Chair. Good morning to you. Councillor Paul Kimber. Good morning, Paul. Good morning, Chair. Good morning to you. Councillor Louis O'Leary. He's not present. I haven't received an apology from him. Was he? Right. He should have sent an apology. Councillor Kate Weller. Councillor Sarah Williams. Good morning, Sarah. Good morning to you. And Councillor John Worth. Good morning, John. Good morning. Good morning. Officers involved in the meeting include Anne Collins, Area Manager, Philip Crowther, Legal Business Partner, Matthew Poken-Hawkes, Lead Project Officer, Shanta Parsons, Senior Planning Officer, Robert Piggott, Planning Officer, Steve Savage, Transport Development, Paul Eastwood, Engineer, Elaine Tibble, Senior Democratic Services, and Joshua Kennedy, Democratic Services Officer. Apologies. Item 1 on the agenda, to confirm any apologies for absence. Over to you, Josh.
Thank you, Chair. So we've received apologies from Councillors Bolwell and Councillor Weller.
Thank you for that. Item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Does any member have any declarations of pecuniary or other conflict of interest, bias or predetermination regarding any item on the agenda? Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of January 2024. Has all members received a copy of those minutes? Thank you. If members are content, I will sign those minutes as a true record of what took place. Item 4 on the agenda is public participation. Only members of the public who have registered to speak on an application will be invited to address the committee. The order of speaking will normally be the first 3 in objection and the first 3 in support, including the applicant or agent. If a ward councillor who is not a member of the committee wishes to address the committee, they will be allowed 3 minutes to do so. Neither the objectors or supporters will normally be questioned, except to clarify a point of fact by the chairman. All written statements received by Democratic Services have been passed to members prior to this meeting. Members of the committee, there has been an update sheet. Are you all happy and you've read it and understand? And thank you. Okay, now we go on to planning applications, which is item 5 on the agenda. We have 3 planning applications before us today for consideration. A comfort break of 5 or 10 minutes will be taken as and when is requested. Item 5A on the agenda is application PFUL 2023-04091, Darragh House, Parham House, Parham, Bemister, DT8 3LZ. And that's for the erection of a new dwelling, construct swimming pool and pool plant house, alterations and extensions to Darragh House to provide enhanced internal accommodation, part demolition including existing boiler room, utility room, conservatory, garage, walling structures within the courtyard, and detached outbuilding. Beg your pardon. Reinstatement of carriageway, gates, piers, and boundary enclosures, and erection of bike stores. The case officer for this particular application is Matthew Pokenhall. Good morning, Matthew. Over to you to introduce the item.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Okay, so just for context, I'll take you through the aerials for Parham Park, which is located south of Berminster off the A3066. The main northern access here is highlighted in blue. That's from the Berminster end of the site, which leads down to the main house here. There are also 2 other accesses to Parham Park on the east side off the main road. One here, which is by the agricultural barn, which leads down to the main house, and another here, which serves the Dower House, which is the application and the site that we're talking about today, just outlined in red. So, designations and constraints. The site is outside of the defined development boundary. It's within the Dorset AONB National Landscape. It's within a site of nature conservation interest. It is within the setting of Parham House. So I'm just highlighting Parham House here, number 1 on the plan. It falls within the registered park and gardens, and the site includes the Dower House, which is just here under number 3. There are also a number of other listed buildings within the estate, including the stables block, the kitchen walled gardens, and an ice house structure up here, which are grade 2 and 2-star listed. And I should just also mention the grading of the house is grade 1, the registered park and garden is grade 2-star, and the Dower House is grade 2. So just going to show some photos of Parham House here, and this is the front of the grade 1 listed element. And as you can see, there's from these photos, there was a fire in 2017, which caused severe damage to the historic south wing of the building. It essentially gutted most of the building, including the floors, fixtures and fittings, leaving the walls standing. And here you can see the kind of southwest corner of the site, where the kind of south wing here is in a state of disrepair and open to the elements, and the west wing here has been largely restored, and there are works kind of ongoing to the west wing and the north stables. This is the application site that we're talking about today. So those photos I just showed were of Parham House here, and the Dower House is a existing 4-bed property located here at the entrance, at this eastern entrance here. So you can see there's a route that leads up to the Dower House from Parham House. This plan shows the existing site in red, and it highlights those parts of the Dower House which are proposed to be demolished. So just to run through what they are, there's an existing gate on the front on the main road here proposed for demolition. There's a garage structure, a shed, utility room, conservatory, boiler room, courtyard, and just to point out, there is an existing swimming pool here within the site and a pool house which is just outside the site boundary. These are some extracts, aerials and a photo from the design access statement, and they just help to show the relationship between the house and the main access to the road. So this aerial here, you can see the access and the parking area onto the main road here, and what you can see are the remnants of the historic track that led down to Parham House, but there isn't a kind of connected vehicle access which runs through here and connects the Dower House with Parham House. You can also see the pool and some of the structures proposed for demolition, including the garage here and the conservatory on the left side of the front elevation of the building. I'm just going to show a series of photos here around the site. So these photos show the route up from Parham House to the Dower House. And this was a historic route established in the early 20th century as a new access to Parham House. So these photos, 1, 2, 3, 4, walk you up from Parham House to the Dower House. As you get closer to Parham House here, number 5, so as you get closer to the Dower House, photo number 5 here, you can see the track disappears and you've got the kind of informal route that links with the Dower House. Turning back around to look towards Parham House at view number 6 here, there is limited visibility of Parham House, and you can see that route that leads down to it. These photos show the immediate surrounds of the Dower House. In photo 1, you've got the pool to the west of the house. Photos 2 and 3 show the west elevation, which faces towards Parham House, and you can see the conservatory element here and the utility room, which are proposed to be demolished. These 2 bits of the building are proposed to be retained and extended. Around the front of the house, you can see part of the remnants of the historic pier, and this formed part of the entrance to the building, and the application includes reinstatement of the gates and the entrance. Moving away from the Dower House to the kind of to the edge of the residential curtilage, you've got views back here to the house, and you've got intervening trees here. And then turning around to look back into the park, you can see the wider registered park and garden, this part of which is called South Park, and it has a kind of rugged feel with large open spaces and trees. On the east side of the Dower House, this is the access area that I was talking about, and the car parking area. You can also see here one of the piers here, which is proposed to be reincorporated into the proposed new dwelling, which is a holiday let. This is there is another access which serves the Dower House to the north of the building, and this is the garage which is proposed to be demolished. If you follow this parking area and the route further north, you get to that other access on the east side of Parham Park, which I pointed out on the first slide, and that's near the agricultural building here, and that's the route that leads down to Parham House. So hopefully those show a kind of good context for the estate. I'm just going to come on to the proposals, and what I've got here are the original proposals and the amended proposals, because the scheme's been changed over the course of determination. On the left, you've got the original proposals. Originally, the application came in as a market dwelling. We advised the applicant that wouldn't be acceptable in principle because it was located outside of the DDB. It also included 2 driveways here around to the rear of the new dwelling and to the rear of the existing dwelling. There were concerns raised at that stage about impacts on trees and on the registered park and garden. Both of these units would have been accessed via the proposed and existing entrance here. So the scheme was amended. That's shown on the right-hand side, and as you can see, the accesses around the side were removed, and the arrangements for access for the dwelling were also changed as well. So on this, only one dwelling would have been served by the new access, and the existing dower house would have been served from the north. The scheme for both buildings was also amended as well, so the dower house extensions were reduced in scale, and as were the extensions to the proposed new dwelling as well, in terms of the scale and the footprint. So this just shows a closer up plan, and just to point out the proposed, that's the existing swimming pool and the pool house, and we've got a proposed swimming pool and a pool house here, so each dwelling would have its own pool and pool house. There are also air source heat pumps as well, just on the edge of the building to improve the kind of energy efficiency there. So the application has kind of two elements to it really, which are the dower house extensions and the new dwelling. So I'm just going to do those in turn. This is the dower house, and as set out in the report, the council granted planning permission in 2021 for extensions to the dower house. So these plans show that approved scheme here. Next to what is now proposed, and we've also got the demolitions to the building as well. So really, the layout and extensions are very similar to what was approved in 2021. As you can see, they take up essentially the same, broadly the same footprint. And on the elevations here, the south elevation, this is pretty much identical. They both propose the removal of the conservatory there, which you can see on the left-hand side. Looking at the west elevation of the building, again, you can see the parts of the building to be demolished are the same, and the form of the extension here takes a different style windows, which some concerns have been raised by the conservation officer, and a different roof form as well. But it is still single-story extension to the rear, and this is the north elevation of the proposal. And as you can see, what was approved in 2021 did obscure part of the building. Concerns have been raised about that by consultees, and the revised proposal does obscure more of that building. And I suppose it's fair to say that is a part of the building which isn't readily visible. And you've also got the air source heat pump there. And what was changed during the application with this red revision bubble is just to step the dower house extension back so that it doesn't kind of protrude beyond that principal facade. This is the final east elevation of the dower house, and as you can see here, you've got the different roof form here. Materials are largely similar, stone and tile, to reflect the existing dower house, and you've got the gates as well reinstated at the main entrance. So coming on to the proposed holiday let, which is opposite the existing dower house. So these are the floor plans. It's a 4-bed property. It's been designed as a multi-generational unit with accessible accommodation, a bedroom on the floor, ground floor, as well as dining space as well, and then 3 bedrooms on the first floor. Again, it's similar in form to the dower house in that you've got the 2-story element on the right-hand side here, and there's a single-story element on the south side of the building on the left there. So just to go through the elevations, this is the elevation for the main road, and you can see the existing proposed extended dower house here with the gates, and the proposed new dower house with the existing pier here. That's proposed to be incorporated within the elevation of the building, and the design has been tried to closely mirror the design of the dower house. Materials would largely match with stone and tiles for the walls and roof. From the west side, facing Parham House, again you can see the 2-story element and the single-story element behind. That's the proposed new building here. And these are the north and south elevations, the front and rear of the building. And really, this does very very much largely mirror the existing Dow House, and the rear takes on a different, more modern form here with glazing and photovoltaic panels. So the key planning issues here, just going to talk through the key ones on principle and heritage on this slide. And the principle, as I said, that it was unacceptable when originally submitted because it was a separate dwelling outside of the DDB. And the applicant, when the scheme was amended, they changed it to a holiday let. So under policy Econ 6, holiday lets can be acceptable in principle where they extend existing holiday accommodation, and they can be acceptable under policy SUS 2 as well. So on the principle of development, that would be acceptable subject to a planning condition, ensuring that it is a holiday let, and on a Section 106 link, securing the tie with the Parham estate. On heritage, there have been concerns raised by Historic England, the Conservation Officer, Landscape Officer, and the Garden Trust. That's all set out in the officer's report. The primary concerns relate to the new holiday let. The proposed changes to the existing Dow House are judged to be broadly acceptable and could be acceptable with conditions, and there isn't any heritage harm from that element of the proposal. The harm is judged to arise from the new building. So overall, the new dwelling is judged to cause less than substantial harm to Parham House, the Dower House, and the registered park and gardens through development within their setting. This is set out in the report, and in summary, the new holiday let is considered to cause harm through undermining the current Dow House and intensifying the scale of development at Parham Park. The Dow House is a relatively modest building and would have marked a historic entrance to Parham House. What the proposed new dwelling does, it increases that footprint. It almost doubles the footprint of the holiday let here. So what we've got is that's the existing Dow House, and you've got the new Dow House here with Parham House on this historic route. And that scale of development is judged to be harmful to the hierarchy of buildings within the estate and the registered park and garden. And what that does is it gives greater prominence to the new Dower House at this entrance, which could compete with Parham House. So that's because of this historic route. It's a very sensitive area in heritage terms, and that increase in scale is judged to be harmful to the group value, distracting from the significance of both Parham House, the Dower House, and being harmful to the registered park and garden, including through the extra domestic infrastructure in the form of the swimming pool and the pool house. So what the NPPF says is that any harm should require clear and convincing justification. And when the application came in, it was fairly light on the justification. And what the applicant submitted over the course of the application are these four things here. They've submitted heritage rebuttals, which are addressed in the report, and they're on the application register as well. They've submitted a business plan. This is a business plan which was previously submitted with the river lodges and the orchard rooms. And what that sets out is the applicant's aims to create a market-leading sustainable hospitality venue at the estate. And it notes various developments around the estate and how they would be needed to create a viable business. The holiday let is set out in there, and it's identified that it would be a multi-generational offer, so it would serve certain needs for people visiting Parham Park. But what it lacks is some detailed information on the cost and revenue of the proposal, which is unclear, and it's unclear the contribution that this new holiday let would make to the estate, and how it's needed to sustain that business in the longer term. The applicants also submitted a copy of events, lists and bookings. They show that a holiday accommodation business started in June 2021, and it shows that there have been a number of events over the last 3 years, including birthdays, weddings, recreational stays, and guests stayed in restored parts of Parham House, in the current Dow House, and in camping within the grounds as well. And the applicants also submitted an illustrative master plan, which has been requested by consultees over the course of the application. So I'll just come on to this master plan. So this is what's been submitted. It's an illustrative master plan. It doesn't form an approved drawing. It hasn't been endorsed by the council, and it shows two things really: that what's already been granted planning permission and what's intended by the applicant. So to go through what's already been granted, and I'll try and point these out as best as I can on the screen. We've got the river lodges and orchard rooms. So in a couple of years ago, or it may have been last year. April last year, 4 river lodges were approved planning permission to the north of the Parham house and west of the walled garden. They're about here. They haven't been implemented yet. And around the same time, planning permission was also granted for 6 orchard rooms, which are also visitor accommodation. They were granted in February, and they haven't been implemented yet. Within the walled garden itself, the council has granted temporary planning permission for a marquee, and that was also granted in April last year. It hasn't been implemented. To the north of that, also within the walled garden, is a potting shed, which was granted last year and has been implemented. And to serve all of that, there is a car park, which is to the north of the walled garden. That was granted at the same time. It has been built, but the planning conditions haven't been discharged. Moving on to the kind of potential future works, there are proposals to. I must also mention the works that have been done on the Parham house as well. There has been some restoration works to the west wing and the north stables block. The main historic wing remains in a state of ruin, and the longer term proposals are to restore that and provide a hospitality venue at the main Parham house. We also have a live application for a boathouse, which is on the lake to the south of Parham house. That is a 1-bed holiday let property. It's a live application, hasn't been resolved yet. And then we've also got this application for the mirrored dower house. So what isn't shown on this proposal is the enabling development that's expected to come forward to serve the restoration of Parham house. That is a costly proposal, and it's expected that some significant enabling development is needed, and what that would likely involve is a number of houses being built within the grounds of the estate. It was shown within an earlier version of the master plan, but this latest version doesn't show it. But the scale of that development is uncertain at the moment, and so the cumulative effects of all of this are unknown at the moment. But the enabling developments are expected to be around the northern area of the park, as shown on the second version of the master plan that was submitted. So overall, that further information that's been submitted, it's not clear and convincing to justify the level of the harm, and what we as officers would ideally have wanted is that further justification to strengthen the arguments for the harm. But just because there is harm doesn't mean that planning permission should be refused. What we need to do is balance that harm against the benefit. So that's out in detail in the report, and I've got on screen here are the social, economic and environmental benefits of the proposal. And just to touch on these, the social and heritage benefits, the proposal would increase the choice of visitor accommodation at Parham Park. There'd be an additional 4-bed unit. It would enable members of the public to experience the heritage assets in a new way, a new vantage point from the holiday let. We accept that there would be some financial support for the ongoing maintenance of the estate and the restoration of Parham Park, although we haven't got any figures on that, and we don't know about the costs of building the new dwelling or the revenue that it would bring in. The proposal would also support, restore that eastern entrance with those gates and that historic route down to Parham House, and there'd also be sill contributions as well. Overall, we set out in the report that we judge that those benefits have moderate weight. In terms of the economic benefits, there would be short-term construction jobs and jobs with the operation of the holiday let, and there would be some support to local businesses as well through the spending of residents. And bearing in mind that this is only 1 4-bed holiday let, those are judged to have limited weight in the heritage balance. In terms of the environmental benefits, there would be a biodiversity net gain, which could be secured through a planning condition on the biodiversity plan, and there would be improvements through the air source heat pumps as well, which the new version of the MPPF says should be given significant weight. Overall, on the heritage balance, it's judged and set out in the report that the public benefits are not considered to outweigh the less than substantial harm. And when coming to that balance, it's necessary to apply great weight to the harm to heritage assets and greater weight to the based on the significance of those buildings. So we've applied greater weight to the harm to the Parham House and to the Registered Park and Garden, which are grade 1 and grade 2 star respectively. In terms of the other key planning issues, these are generally acceptable. The design has clearly been informed by the character of the site and the existing dower house and takes the inspiration from that existing building. It is within the area of outstanding natural beauty, but it's a relatively small development within that, and it's not judged to cause harm to the AONB. Residential amenity, the holiday let and the dower house are closer than the standard. I think they're 60 metres apart rather than 20 metres apart, so it's slightly tight, but overall it's not judged to have a significant adverse effect on residential amenity. Highways and parking, there's been some detailed discussions with the applicant and the Highways Authority on this, and the Highways Authority have worked with them through the issues that arose. And the access to the dower house is not ideal. It's on a bend. It's on a 60-mile-an-hour road, and what we can't have from a highways perspective is a highway safety issue, where we're loading extra vehicle movements onto a junction which is not safe. So to resolve that, what would be necessary is a planning condition restricting that access for only one dwelling, so that there isn't a net gain of units being served by that access. So subject to that condition, highway safety could be satisfactorily resolved. Biodiversity, the proposals are not judged to cause significant harm to the SNCI, and there would be a biodiversity net gain. And in terms of trees, there are some tree removals, but on balance, that's acceptable subject to conditions, and the tree officer has been on site to review the proposals in detail. Overall, the recommendation is to refuse. That's on 2 grounds. The first relates to heritage, the harm to the dower house, Parham House, the Registered Park and Garden, in the absence of clear and convincing justification and without sufficient public benefits to outweigh that harm. The second reason for refusal is procedural, and that's because in the absence of a signed Section 106 agreement, there wouldn't be that link between the new holiday let and the dower house, and the proposal wouldn't be acceptable under Econ 6 because we couldn't say that it would expand and support existing holiday accommodation on site. So that concludes my officer presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Matthew. I now invite Mr. Ed Grant, the applicant, to address the committee. Please speak directly into the microphone. You have 3 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, the officer, for his comments and the councillors for their future comments. I suspect, like us, that you're slightly confused and worried as to why nearly 2 years later I'm here again talking about Parham Park, and after you were so supportive in the last 2 applications. As Mr. Pigeon-Hawkes mentioned, we have started substantial emergency works to prevent the total collapse of the building. We've had a business plan presented since 2021 of how to save this unbelievably important building and to maintain the entire estate. It is understood that we have to reach the basic quantum of accommodation for a viable hospitality offering to do this. Furthermore, the huge employment and investment generated for the immediate area and Dorset as a whole has been encouraged and welcomed. Nothing has changed in any way of what we have proposed. It is the sum of all the parts which will create a viable business for us. The Mirador House was suggested in 2021, and we were actually instructed by individuals in Dorset Council and Historic England, as this was considered an easy solution to some of our issues, especially with accommodation. So what has changed since there? Sadly, we've lost some council officers, we've lost some third-party consultants who were involved. We have crippling delays, and of course the building has only further deteriorated. The risk for us has got greater. We have staggering overheads of looking after a estate of this size, and we've lost over 350 potential events because we couldn't house them. As I can only speak at this hearing, I will briefly address the concerns that have been raised on this application. My comments come with the advice of Dr. James Weir, the head of the Heritage team at Tor & Co, who I'm sure you will recall has a very impressive history working in Dorset, both with the National Trust and with Dorset Council, where he was the senior conservation officer, dealing with major applications and indeed worked on Parham Park. And then, of course, more information from our internationally respected conservation and heritage architects, Purcells. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time talking about the extension of the existing Dower House. As you know, the application, this has already been approved, and the latest changes were to simplify an over-engineered roof design and install windows which are more in keeping of a building of that type. The clue to the application in regards to the rest of it is it's a mirror. It is a mirror of the existing Dower House. It copies the existing design, materials, and architectural hierarchy of these buildings. The suggestion that it would adversely affect the significance of the registered park makes no sense. The proposed Dower House is a substantial distance from the Parham House and cannot be seen. We already have approval for several other crucial new accommodation units, as you know, adjacent to the Grade 1 listed house and sited centrally in the registered park. So we were very surprised to hear on this application the negative comments. Furthermore, this application allows us to reinstate the demolished gates and piers acknowledged as a huge heritage gain. We get to save the original main drive, look after all the historic trees and landscape within that curtilage that have been forgotten for decades, and once again create the public with a magnificent entrance. If I could just lastly address the bizarre claim that twin lodges are unusual. The suggestion that one lodge was the original design intent is entirely spurious. It is more probable that two were intended, but funds did not permit it. If you look at Camford Manor near Wimborne, which had two twin lodges built at exactly the same time, I'll be very quick, sorry, exactly the same time, sadly that important house is now being demolished. Without the courage from this committee and the council to acknowledge, support and seize this unique owner's willingness to risk all for his passion to save nationally important buildings and to work with the authority, then we may be certain that Parham House and its estate will be lost for all of us for good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. I also invite Councillor Craig Monks from Bedminster Town Council to address the committee. Again, Councillor Monks, you've got 3 minutes. Over to you.
Chairman, I'm here today as a representative of Bedminster Town Council, echoing the support of our community for the recent Dower House planning application. The significance of Parham House, both locally and nationally, cannot be overstated. It is not merely a structure of bricks and mortar, it's a landmark of our shared history and a symbol of our collective heritage from the days of Cromwell to the planning of D-Day. For centuries, Parham House and its estate has stood as a testament to our past, a custodian of our memories, and a guardian of our local traditions. Its historical importance transcends the boundaries of our town. Its preservation is not just a matter of local interest, but a duty we all owe to the future generations of Bedminster and wider Dorset. The proposed renovation of Dower House and in turn Parham House represents more than just a restoration project. It brings new opportunities for Bedminster. The prospect of saving and protecting this historical landmark brings with it job creation and economic growth, breathing new life into our community. However, we must acknowledge the challenges that lie ahead, but resist further delay to what is important work in restoring these historical buildings. The recent setbacks and delays in the renovation process have undoubtedly cast a shadow over the applicant's aspirations. Local businesses and our community have felt that impact, experiencing fluctuations in trade and employment as anticipation turned to disappointment. As a town, we simply find the delays in saving Parham unacceptable. We want to see these buildings restored in the thorough and considerate way that we demand and that they demand, but we want to get this restoration done. Today, I'm here to reaffirm our unwavering commitment to Parham House and its long-term protection. We must preserve our heritage and secure Parham and all its estate for residents of Bedminster. The Town Council and the Town of Bedminster stand firmly behind Parham House and the goal of restoring and protecting the estate for all of Bedminster. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now invite Councillor Anthony Alford, who's the ward member for the Egerton ward, which adjoins this site, to address the committee. Councillor Alford, you also have 3 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Knox is apologetic. She can't be here herself this morning, but she is chairing a fire authority meeting. So you have me instead. I, as you say, represent Egerton Ward. That includes the parish of Netherbury, which is adjacent to the site. And I also live in that parish, so I'm thoroughly familiar with Parham House and for many years. I think the first thing that has to be said loud and clear is that both Councillor Knox and myself thoroughly support the idea of a development of a rural business that's in harmony with its context. And I think this is what the applicant is trying to do here. And I think it's wrong to pick at individual pieces and criticise them when you've got to look at the whole plan or the whole way that the project is moving forward. I have been concerned about this expression, less than substantial harm, that seems to be bandied about quite freely. Historic England give guidance on telling you how to interpret or even measure harm. And there are 4 categories, one of which is evidential, there's historical, aesthetic, and communal. But it seems to me that that drill down into those categories has only happened in one particular example, and that is the gain that is being made from the restoration of the gates onto 3066, which have an immense historical value, and we welcome that. But this expression gets bandied about without reference to what it is that's causing said harm. And I certainly interpret the expression less than substantial as potentially being very close to 0. Also, it appears that when that expression is used, there isn't a proper recognition of the mitigation that has already been put in place or established over many years. And I think of an example of the garden, which has certainly quite a lot of surface growth, trees and mature trees and whatever, which prevents extended views anyway. I have one particular ambition for Parham House, which is in a few years' time we'll get plenty of visitors enjoying the countryside, using Parham House as a base for wider tourism, visiting other places in Dorset which people want to visit. And I would like to hear them say, wow, what a wonderful job they've done there. If we can achieve that and pass this consent today, I think we'll be making good progress. But as others have said, the applicant really wishes to speed up the process. It's taken a very, very long time. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Councillor Elford. I now call on Matthew Pokenhawks, the case officer, to respond with any salient points he may wish to clarify. Over to you, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just address these comments in turn, and I think to the applicant and councillors, the officers have tried to work constructively with the applicant. You can see that on the the amendments that have been accepted over the course of determination, and the wide-ranging issues that first appeared have been narrowed down to heritage matters. In terms of the previous applications, they were previous applications and were judged on their own merits. The river lodges were judged not to cause any harm to heritage assets. The orchard rooms were judged to cause harm, and that was less than substantial. And there were public benefits there, including giving public access to one of the listed buildings, the nearby ice house. This proposal needs to be considered on its own merits, which we've set out in the report and the presentation. In terms of the weight to employment, it's accepted that if Parham House was redeveloped in the future for a hospitality venue, that could have huge employment benefits. But we don't know what the future holds for Parham House yet. The optimum viable use hasn't been established. We haven't got a live application in front of us. So what we have to do is consider the benefits of this proposal, and that is of a 4-bedroom holiday let and the restoration of the Dower House, and those benefits are set out in the report as being limited. In terms of the viability that the Dower House could make to that future operation, the viability is unclear at this stage. That hasn't been established through this planning application, but that clear and convincing justification could be possible in the future with the right justification, and potentially through the same application as the restoration of the Dower House itself. Whether the original design intent is one lodge, I don't think it's spurious that it is only one lodge or two lodges. I think there's no evidence before us that there was proposed to be 2 lodges and 2 dower houses in that location. We have one, and there are examples across the country of places which have 2, but they're generally smaller scale and modest gatehouses. The comments from Bimminster Town Council. Again, the point about job creation, we're looking at the specific benefits and job creation of this proposal. That is from the one holiday let in the Dower House. It's accepted that guests staying there will probably spend money within the town, going out to restaurants, but it could really only accommodate one family. So those benefits are relatively small. And we can't say whether the proposal would restore Parham House. I think we accept that there would be a link and it would help to support the running of the estate, but we can't say that it would fully restore the Parham House. That would need to come through a further application and extensive justification. The comments from Egerton Ward Councillor, again, the optimum viable use. We don't know yet what the future holds for Parham House, and that hasn't been established. The applicant's clearly proposing a hospitality venue, but that would need to be established through a separate planning application, whether it's a hotel or a house or something else. Less than substantial harm is set out within the report. And I think there's a comment on visibility as well. And although the visibility between the Dower House and the Parham House is limited, just because you can't see something, it doesn't mean that there isn't heritage harm. It's a very sensitive route, that route between the Dower House and Parham House. So any development or change along that route has the potential to cause harm, and that's what we've set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Matthew. Are there any points to be raised by Highways or any relevant council officer?
No.
Right then, committees, are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was going to ask whether there is a viewpoint from which you can see both Parham House and the proposed new building. But I think you answered that during the course when you said something like, just because you can't see something doesn't mean it can't be harmed. I don't understand how there can be harm established between the new building and Parham House if they can't be seen in the same view. Could you explain how, please?
He just thought he misheard.
Thank you, Councillor. I think there is a small bit of visibility between the Dower House and Parham House. It's fair to say it's very, very limited. So what contributes to the setting and the significance of Parham House includes what's around it, and what's around it includes that route, that historic route from the east entrance down to Parham House, and that's the entirety of the route from the gates up to the house. And change along there through development and through this proposal can have an impact on that the contribution that historic route makes to the setting and the setting of Parham House and the significance of the house. So although it can't be seen from it, that experience of moving from the entrance down to Parham House is very significant, and it holds heritage value. So what you have along that historic route is a proposed new dwelling of a substantial scale. There is a change to that setting which makes positive contribution to the house, and through that change is judged to be harmful in this instance. So it's although it's, you can't really see it in the same view. It's that experience that you get linking these two heritage assets.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matthew, for your reply. Does that answer your question? Okay. All right. Next on my list, I've got Councillor Ireland, who also would like to ask a technical question. Over to you, Councillor Ireland.
Thank you, Chairman. It's on the second reason for refusal, which is the Section 106. So I guess I've got two questions. So when I was reading this, doing the research we all do before planning applications, to be fair, I thought the first bit was quite good and the design of things, but then looking at this 106, that was raising a flag for me. And so I did a bit of research, and the previous applications, so two of them I've looked at, which are the orchard rooms and the river lodges, or vice versa, whatever they're called. Neither of them seem to have a Section 106 agreement as far as I can see from the planning decision. So I guess the questions are, why in this case do we need a Section 106? And I guess the second question is, if we do need a Section 106, and given we've heard from the applicant the necessary need for these properties to support the renovation of the estate, why hasn't a Section 106 been forthcoming? Is that a time issue, or the applicant doesn't want one, for example? So it's two questions. Thank you.
Would you like to answer those two questions, please, Matthew?
Thank you, Councillor. Though the previous applications, the orchard rooms and the orchard rooms and river lodges, they did have a Section 106 agreement which linked those holiday lets with the estate, and I think the applicants agreed in principle that there would be a, you know, if the decision was to approve it, there would be a they accept that there would be a Section 106 agreement on this scheme as well. The reason why we haven't done that yet is because standard practice is to produce those Section 106 agreements after planning committee and a resolution has been reached. And just the reason why that Section 106 is needed, it's about Econ 6, and that talks about built tourist accommodation only being permitted where it's an intensification or extension of existing premises, where the expansion would improve the quality and appearance of the accommodation on site. So that the Section 106 would link it. It would ensure that it improves what is already got planning permission, rather than being a holiday let which could be sold off separately, which could have a kind of harmful effect on the estate. By separating into two separate functions, and you wouldn't get any, there wouldn't be any kind of guarantee of that link as well. I hope that answers your questions.
So, from your response, I guess I'm taking that if this committee went against the recommendation and wishes to actually allow the development to go ahead, we could do that subject to Section 106.
Are you happy with that answer, Councillor Ireland? Okay. Okay, I've now got Councillor Paul Kimber. Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. I was interested that the highways section didn't have any objection. On the presentation, there seemed to be some concern about the junction. I wonder if you could show us that junction and the concerns. And it seems odd that you had concerns and the highways didn't. So if you could clear that point up. Thank you.
Would you like to respond, please, Matthew?
Yeah, let me just try and find this this plan. Yeah, just clarifying, highways may want to jump in on this response as well, but highways did have concerns at the outset of the application, and those they got to a position where they were happy, subject to planning conditions. And this is you can see my pointer there. This is the access in, and what the applicant changed in the proposals was that this new dwelling would only be served by the main entrance, and the existing day house would be served from the north. And the Highways Authority put a planning condition, a recommended planning condition, that this entrance can only be used to serve one dwelling, and there would need to be a kind of a restriction so that it couldn't be used for the rest of the estate, so for the other buildings and uses within Parham, and it could only be used for emergency purposes. So with that condition in place, it's expected it to be some kind of form of barriers or something within about this location. And that would mean that there's no net gain of highway movements, and there would only be, there'd only be one unit being served here. So it's not safe access, but we wouldn't be making the situation any worse with the planning condition imposed. Without that planning condition, there would be a highway safety issue because of the intensification of a unsafe junction.
Can I just say, I just agree that there would be an intensification of use if we didn't have any barriers put in there. So that's the reason why we put that condition.
Does that have to answer your question, Councillor Kimber?
If I can just do a follow-up, then that would mean that if this application went ahead in the fullness of time, changes would have to be made on that particular layout to make it safe. Am I correct?
Who's got that? Would you like to respond to that? Was that Highways? Would you like to respond to that?
Hey, Chair. The issue we have here, Councillor, is that the existing access is substandard in terms of visibility. We're on a national speed limit there. They don't have sufficient visibility displays available at that junction. So as a highway authority, we can't support the intensification of use of that access. So as Matthew's explained, we will only allow the use, or we would only recommend the use of that access by a single unit, because that's what exists at the moment. So the recommendation of a condition for bollards, would it mean that we have still a single unit, i.e. the new dwelling, the holiday let, served from the existing access, and the existing dwelling will be served from the alternative access point, which is to the east. So we're not intensifying that use. If you were minded to recommend an approval for this, we would need that condition imposed. If it wasn't, we would deem it to be contrary to the recommendation of the NPPF. We would deem it to be severe, and we would recommend a refusal on the highway grounds. This, again, is consistent with what we said on the previous applications, and that effectively we drew a line in the sand to say it's okay as it is. Any more traffic through there, we would have to recommend refusal. Hopefully that explains matters.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Kimber? I've had an indication that Councillor Ireland would like to come back. I'll allow you to come back for another question.
Yes, it's just a thought. My wife is Irish, and we have a lot of experience over there of new houses being built in fields. And one of the things the local planning authorities do at the time, I guess in conjunction with the county councils, is that they enforce basically moving walls back, adding lots of visibility displays and things like that. So is there a possibility, given that the existing junction is substandard and dangerous, as part of this, we could impose a condition to do such a thing, i.e. widen displays, if it was possible, make the junction safer? I feel slightly uncomfortable if we do go down the road of approving this, and there was an opportunity we could have taken to actually make what's obviously not a safe junction safer. We should have done. So could you answer that, please?
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. Would you like to respond to that particular question?
Thank you, Councillor. The visibility display can't be improved. The visibility is 120 metres at the moment from the exit entrance. It cannot be improved any further.
Any more technical questions? Right, okay. Before I open the debate, members, may I remind you to direct any questions or remarks through the chair, and I will invite members to speak in turn. I also, I beg your pardon, I also ask members to state their names before addressing the committee and speak directly into the microphones. Microphones should be kept on mute when not speaking. I now open the debate to members.
Councillor Worth.
Councillor Ware.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Councillor John Worth for Shickerell Ward. When we look at the Parham estate, it's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. There are lots of different elements. The main problem is that to create what the owners want to create, which is the restoration of Parham House, is going to cost a fortune. The only way that's going to happen is if they are allowed to open up other revenue streams. So at the end of the day, if we don't allow these revenue streams to be opened up, and I look at this application and I think to myself, it's a mirror image of the Dower House. In 10 years' time, probably nobody will even notice the difference because it will have weathered and it will probably be just like the existing Dower House. So I'm quite content with going against the officer's recommendation and recommending approval for this development because I think it will enhance what's there. It will secure investment in Parham House for the future. So that's my recommendation.
Can I confirm, Councillor Worth, that was a proposal to vote against the officer's recommendation?
Go against the officer's recommendation and grant approval for this development.
Committee, as we've got a proposal on the floor, I'll now see the seconder before we continue. Who was first? Councillor Clayton. Okay. and approve the application. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yeah, I can come back to you. Yeah. Councillor Ireland.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah, Nick Ireland, Crossways Wood. I'm happy to support the proposal as long as it's subject to Section 106, as we've discussed previously.
Okay, we've now got a proposal duly seconded. We do need reasons, planning reasons for voting against the officer's recommendation. So I'd like to pass across to my legal team and Councillor and Anne to respond.
Thank you, Chairman. It's for the proposer and the seconder to explain the reasons for their recommendation, not for officers. We can assist in fleshing out those reasons into a formal decision notice, but before we can even get to that finessing, we need proper planning reasons which deal with the or which address the reasons for refusal in the the recommendation in the officer's report. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Worth and Councillor Clayton, you both have a list of material planning considerations at your disposal. I'd like you to come up with a form of words which would actually approve the application. Okay, over to you.
Yes, I feel that the public benefit outweighs the less than substantial harm. And I also feel that we're not impacting on road safety by the conditions of highways. So I see no reason that this can't go ahead.
Anne, do you have any comments on that particular reason?
Chair, I will need to know what public benefit, in the view of members, outweighs the less than substantial harm.
Councillor Kimber.
Well, it seems to me, Chair, Councillor Paul Kimber, Portland, that the public benefits are that this house must be very, very expensive to maintain. And there could be dangers if we don't support these type of initiatives. Not only that, we've spoken briefly about rural employment, and that's difficult to get jobs, I would imagine, create jobs in and around that area, the countryside. I think there is clearly a public benefit to that local economy. If I may put that forward. Thank you.
Do we have a form of words which
It's come from Councillor Kimber,
right?
but it's Councillor Worth's proposal.
Is Councillor Worth? Do you have you thought on any more form of words which you could use in planning terms to actually change the officer's decision?
Yes, the economic benefits to the wider area and Dorset as a whole, because this would be a prestigious venue, and this is all part of what I've said is a jigsaw. So I think the economic benefits and those would be quite significant to the local surroundings as well. So I think that's another public benefit.
Yeah, I would just add to that, certainly in my opinion, the level of harm to the significance of the building and the setting is absolutely minimal. and it won't require much to outbalance that. Just picking up on something Councillor Alford said, one of the things I find frustrating when we start talking about damage to the significance of a heritage asset is that Historic England's definition says the value of the asset to future generation, this and future generations because of. How many people, how many members of the present generation are actually asked to what extent they value that? I feel that it's largely, dare I say, a guess. It's an estimate by a very few people, and it's a value judgment. And certainly, in my perspective, my values would be completely different, perhaps, to somebody else's. And I don't know quite how you balance that, but certainly to my perspective, the damage would be minimal compared to the benefits.
I now hand over to Anne Collins. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Members can attach weight to the economic benefits in terms of having regard to this proposal, but I do just want members to be very clear that the proposal you're considering today is an extension to the existing Dower House and another unit of holiday accommodation. You are not considering a proposal for Parham to be used as a hospitality venue in the main house or for the restoration of the house. So, as Matthew has already said as part of his presentation, the economic benefits created from the employment of provision of one holiday let is minimal.
Do you have any comments on that, Councillor?
I fully accept that we are only looking at one application before us, but as I said earlier, it's part of this jigsaw puzzle that, you know, and I know we can't preempt whatever's going to come before us in the future, but I think if we don't look at each thing individually and then assess it and think, yes, it's a good idea or not in planning terms, it's causing less than substantial harm, it is one dwelling, it will make an economic benefit, and potentially it could help to secure the restoration of Parham House, although we probably can't use that as an argument. So I'm still happy with what I've said before.
Just hold just a moment. I'm just going to hand over to our legal representative to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make it clear to members what tests you need to apply in respect of heritage assets, and how you deal with less than substantial harm in the scale of things. So less than substantial harm doesn't mean you give it no weight. It's the way that national policy distinguishes between levels of harm, and it only gives two levels of harm in national policy, one, leaving aside the circumstances where there are no harm, and I've not heard members say that. So you can only have less than substantial harm or substantial harm. Combination of the MPPF and the statutory duty that you're under means that even less than substantial harm carries significant weight when you're looking at the heritage balance. So that's why you've been told about you needing a clear and convincing justification, because any harm to a listed building has to be given significant weight and has to be clearly and convincingly outweighed by the public benefits. So it's not a question of saying there is a low level of harm and therefore it doesn't need a great deal of benefit to overcome that. It needs a significant level of benefit to overcome the harm, even if it is less than substantial. So effectively you're starting with almost a presumption against granting permission where there is harm, and that needs to be outweighed clearly and convincingly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Crowther. I believe Councillor Allen would like to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't think there's any particular harm to Parham House out of this application. I just find it slightly perverse that, you know, we had several applications in front of us relating to this estate, and we've approved, I think, most of them. And I think the general ethos behind those approvals is that we felt as a committee that, you know, there is going to be a cumulative effect building up that helps the estate, become financially sustainable. And if you look at the papers that were, I think, submitted by Councillor Knox yesterday by email, some of the things mentioned that nobody was interested in buying basically a derelict, ruined property as a house, and the only people who were interested were the current owners, and on a basis of a business model to use it for weddings, that sort of thing, and that's quite a profitable business. So if we in the past have already supported essentially what's going on, I can't see why we can't take that into consideration in this case. It's one, okay, we all accept one building's not going to make a difference, but the cumulative effect of many will, and you can't get away from that. That's a fact.
I'm just going to address Anne Collins. Do we have a form of words which can be worked on in order to bring back to committee?
Chair, yes, I think we'll need to adjourn and consider those words.
That I feel would be quite appropriate. Any suggestions for how long?
10 minutes.
Committee, members of the public, I'm going to adjourn the meeting for a period of 10 minutes to re-sit at 25 minutes past 11. Right, reconvene the meeting. We don't need to do a committee members check, so I hand over to Anne Collins for a form of words which can then be presented to the committee. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Before we get to that stage, I think we just need to be very clear. We've talked about the less than substantial harm to Parham House. Members haven't talked about the fact that it's within the setting of the registered parking gardens, which are Grade 2 star listed. We don't have many registered parking gardens nationally, let alone Grade 2 star listed. It's also obviously the Mirror Dower House. It's adjacent to the existing Dower House, which is Grade 2 listed in its own right. I've not heard members say that the development wouldn't have less than substantial harm to these important designated heritage assets. So overall, members seem to be saying that it would have less than substantial harm to the setting of Parham House, a Grade 1 listed building, less than substantial harm to the registered parking gardens, Grade 2 star listed, and to the setting of the Dower House, a Grade 2 listed building, and that members need to have clear and convincing justification in terms of the public benefits to outweigh that harm. So I just need members to be clear about that in terms of the setting of those other heritage assets.
I go to the committee to ask if anyone wishes to ask any questions on those points, please. Right.
Nobody.
Nobody. Pardon?
Councillor Ireland.
Have we got a form? Councillor Worth, you've heard those comments. Do you have anything to say regarding your proposal? And of course, Councillor Clayton, nothing to add to your proposal and seconded.
Councillor Ireland wished to speak.
Councillor Ireland, you wish to speak?
Please. Yeah, I'm just looking at the recommendation, and it seems to be, well, the wording is building the new dwelling would undermine the hierarchy of buildings within the Parham estate, and blah blah blah. Well, actually, it's not. It's going to undermine the hierarchy. Essentially, we've heard it's essentially going to be a mirror of the existing Dower House. So, I would say it's actually augmenting and strengthening. I'll use that word. The situation rather than actually undermining the hierarchy. That's my view, anyway. So.
I'm going to pass over to Mr. Crowther to say a few words. I'll come back.
Thank you. Hear what Councillor Ireland said. It's really for the proposer and the seconder to respond to the points that Mrs. Collins made about just being clear about whether, because I think proposer and seconder accepted that there was less than substantial harm and that was outweighed. So it's just, as proposer and seconder, you need to respond to Mrs. Collins' points about that there is harm to more than just Parham House itself, that it's to the registered parking gardens and to the Dower House as a building which is listed in its own right. I think Councillor Ireland's comments, at least on the face of them, might suggest that a move away from accepting that there is harm, and if members were minded to go down that route, I think we would need more of an explanation about why that view is taken. But as I say, that's not the reasons, as I understand them, given by the proposer and the seconder. I think I've understood there's an acceptance of less than substantial harm to at least one of the heritage assets, but that harm is clearly outweighed by the public benefit. So if we could just, sorry, at risk of repeating myself, ask Councillor Worth and Councillor Bolwell to just respond to Mrs. Collins' points and confirm. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Clayton.
Yes. I mean, I think taking into consideration the other heritage assets, I still believe that there is less than substantial harm, and it is outweighed by the economic benefits to the surrounding area. So I have nothing further to add on that.
Okay. Did you want to say something else, Councillor Ireland? No? Councillor Williams?
Yeah, one of the things that will benefit, and that's historic restoration of the gates, will actually, so if this application doesn't go ahead, those gates will not be restored.
Would you like to come back on that?
Thank you, Chair. Just to be very clear, Matthew did explain that back in 2021, a previous application to extend the Dow House was approved, and incorporated in that scheme was the restoration of the gates. So the applicant does already have the benefit of planning permission and listed building consent for the restoration of the gates, and therefore it is not dependent upon this planning permission.
Can I come back? That was back in 21. Has that application now run out with a 3-year rule?
No, Chair, it's still an extant plan permission that could be implemented.
Councillor Worth.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm just wondering how long we're going to be batting backwards and forwards to come to a conclusion on this. Have the officers got a formula of words that will support my recommendation for approval for this planning application? And if so, could we hear those words? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So to be very clear, members consider that the less substantial harm to the setting of Parham House, a Grade 1 listed building, less substantial harm to the Registered Parks and Gardens Grade 2 star, and to the Dower House, a Grade 2 listed building in its own right, is outweighed by the economic benefits of the provision of 1 unit of holiday accommodation.
Chair, just for the formality, we just check formally that councillors Worth and Clayton, thank you, Chair, are happy with that form of words. If they are, then before we go to a vote, we need to look at conditions and whether or not Section 106 agreement should be imposed. So I think if we could just go to councillors Worth and Clayton first for the reason, and then we can come back with proposed conditions in Section 106. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Worth, yeah. Can you, yeah, you, thank you. Matthew.
Okay, so yeah, we've had a look at the planning conditions that are from the consultation responses, and others that officers think are necessary to make the development acceptable. And what I'll show on screen is a high-level summary of those conditions and the recommendation as well, which is also subject to a Section 106. So that's on screen there. And what we, yeah, so the recommendation then will be a kind of Part A and Part B, delegating authority subject to a Section 106 agreement to tie the holiday let to Parham House in a similar way to the previous holiday let schemes. And these are the suggested planning conditions, and I'll just run through these. And so we've got the standard plans list, the approved plans for the development. We have the time limit of the scheme, and officers suggest that's linked to the river lodges and the orchard rooms, because policy Econ 6 talks about new holiday accommodation improving what's already there. Well, we've got permission for the river lodges and the orchard rooms, 10 units of holiday accommodation already. So I think reducing that time limit for implementation would give around 2 years for the proposal to be implemented. So that's a reduced time limit. The third condition there is on the holiday purpose, restricting the proposed dwelling to a holiday let only, because a separate dwelling, market dwelling, is not acceptable in policy terms. We've got conditions here on the materials, external materials, including specification and samples, windows and doors, gates and finials and piers. These are really, very similar to what was on the previous application for the Dower House. There's details about rainwater goods, landscaping and planting scheme to be agreed, because we haven't got those details. In the report talks about trees and what the tree officers said there. We haven't got our method statement which looks at the updated proposals, so those would be conditioned under number 9 with our method statement, tree constraints plan, tree removals plan. The restricted access, as mentioned, by highways to serve the holiday let only, because without that there would be a highway safety situation, and that would be a clear reason for refusal. There's other highways conditions here on access, turning and manoeuvring of parking to be provided. The vehicle access specification, the first 5 metres into the site, the electric gates, details of those, so that doesn't cause a highway safety issue if they weren't to function or open onto the highway. There's a condition there on the air source heat pumps, and that's put in there. The report gives weight to air source heat pumps, which can be significant. So if that's considered necessary to make the development acceptable, it should be conditioned. And then there's a condition there on the biodiversity plan as well. So they're obviously the headlines of the conditions, and what the recommendation would be for liaison with the chair of the planning committee to agree the detailed wording of the planning conditions before any decision is issued. And we'd of course need to get the applicant's agreement to any pre-commencement conditions, which we'd do through exchange of emails. Okay, if you've got any questions on those conditions, then happy to take them.
Councillor Ireland.
Yeah, it's not actually a question. There's a typo in B. After the 6 months, I think you mean of rather than if.
Any questions for Matthew from the committee regarding those conditions? Councillor Worth and Councillor Clayton, you've heard those conditions as read out by the case officer. Are you in agreement with those?
Yes, Chairman, I'm happy to accept those conditions.
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Williams.
I might be jumping the gun, but have we got the conditions of V106 on there that will be needed to be, which we've said will need to be agreed?
Yes, Councillor. The part A of that recommendation is for the completion of a Section 106 to be agreed with the legal services manager and tie in the proposed holiday let. So we haven't got it. We haven't got the detailed wording of it, but that would be worked up post-committee. and the decision would only be issued when we've got that Section 106 agreement in hand and the conditions have been finalised. That would need to be signed by both parties.
Okay, committee, we've now got a form of words which has been proposed and seconded upon and approved by those proposers and seconders. And I'm now really in a position whereby if there's no more deliberation and members are satisfied they heard the entire presentation debate, I will now take a vote by a show of hands. All those in favour of the new recommendation as laid out by Mrs. Collins and approved by the proposer and seconder. All those in favour? Abstain. Did you want to count that again? I didn't miss that. 7. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Me.
Oh.
Yeah. Any against? Any abstentions? That proposal was laid out by the officer, has been overturned by the committee, and the committee has found in favour of the proposal, in favour of the application in a form of 7 for, none against, and 1 abstention. That then means that this particular item has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much
See you
indeed.
later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, committee. Now we take item 5B on the agenda. That's application number PFUL 2023-06865, Upline Road, Business Park, Upline Road, Lyme Regis, DT7 3LS. And that's for the construction of 13 storage units. The case officer is Shanta Parsons, and I hand over to you, Shanta, to your presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a full application for the erection of 13 storage units. The reason for the application coming to committee today is because part of the land within the red line, which is the access from the public highway to the entrance to the application site area, is on Dorset-owned land. As you can see, the application site area is outlined in red, and the land is within the settlement boundary, within a well-established business park. Upline Road runs along here and then leads into the site towards this rectangular area of land, which is the site. The land which is owned by Dorset is from the entrance into the site here to the public highway, which is here, and that's the reason for it coming to committee. We'll have a look at a couple of aerials to put the site in context. And this is the approximate, well, the location of it. Clearly, the site area is not a circular site. And you can see Upline Road running from north to south, and residential properties within Hay Close to the northeast of the site. And immediately adjacent to the northwest is the car park which serves the Lyme Regis Medical Centre, which is here. And then the other part of the land comprises of commercial units. And that's just a little bit closer view of the site. A couple of these are from Street View, and then the rest of the photographs are the ones that I've taken. So this is leading along the road, along the track, the drive from the public highway towards the site. The entrance to the site is at these green gates here. This building that you can see, the low-level building, is adjacent to the site. And then just moving on down, looking again at the entrance, which is here, that same building, which is outside of the site along here. And the site is formed from here along to approximately here. And this is standing at the site entrance. These are my site photographs looking directly into the site. And I'm going to pan around so that you can see the extent of the land. This is standing within the site, looking back through the entrance gates back at the, I think that's one of the commercial units, the leisure centre. And this is looking along the southwest boundary towards the northwest boundary. The cars that you can see parked there are the ones that are in the medical centre car park. And again, a similar view, but a little bit closer. And then this is looking towards the northeast boundary from within the site. And this is further down, standing further down towards the car park within the site, looking back towards the southeast boundary. Now, this is the proposed layout. Again, you can see the entrance to the site is here. It's not proposed to change that. It is a rough square or rectangle shaped site, and it's proposed to site 2 blocks of storage units. These are shown an L-shaped block along here, 8 units here, and a further 5 units along here. And the proposal includes parking and turning and additional landscaping. As I said, it's proposed to erect 13 units. It's anticipated that the units will be used for storage of boats, vehicles, or general household goods. In terms of the size of the units, they are, for example, one of the units, the typical size of this unit is 4.5 metres by 7 metres, standing at a height of 6 metres. And so they are a little bit larger than a domestic garage. This is the elevations of the units. As you can see, they are multicoloured, designed to be in the style of a sort of a Norwegian boathouse style. And this is the block of units that sit in a row. And these cross-sections indicate the land levels. This is the existing medical centre and the commercial units. And then the access comes into the site for the storage units and then drops down away towards the residential properties. And the cross-section at the bottom is from the opposite direction. And a couple of cross-sections, again, which indicate the site within its context, with this cross-section at the bottom indicating the existing commercial buildings to the rear and the medical centre on that side. Now, in terms of the key planning issues with the proposal, the site is within a well-established business park, which is designated as a key employment site, and the use for storage is supported by policies within the local plan, particularly Econ 2, and therefore it's considered that the principle of the use of the land is acceptable. In terms of scale, design, impact on the character of the area, the proposal would comprise relatively low-level development, being single-storey storage structures, and due to their design, colour and character, the development would not detract from the visual amenity of the area or the local landscape. or from long-distance views, nor on the impact on the national landscape, formerly the area of outstanding natural beauty. In terms of impact on amenity, it's proposed to retain the existing trees and hedgerow along the northeast boundary, and due to the low ridge line of the proposed units, their layout and their use as B8 storage units, it's not considered that the development would have a significant adverse effect on the living conditions of the occupiers of the residential properties adjacent through loss of privacy, overshadowing, overbearing impact, or flicker. Furthermore, it's not considered that the level of use would create an unacceptable level of noise or disturbance, which would detract from the amenity of the residential area. In terms of access and parking, the existing access would be utilised and there would be adequate parking to provide for the storage units. That's not considered that there would be any impact on highway safety. In terms of impact on flood risk, the development would utilise the existing piped system for surface water drainage, and it's not considered that that would generate flooding through any surface water runoff or exacerbate flooding elsewhere. And in terms of coastal erosion and land instability, the proposed development is unlikely to exacerbate any instability risks in the area, and it's considered that the development would be acceptable in those terms. Therefore, the recommendation is to grant consent subject to a number of conditions. First condition relating to the standard must commence within 3 years. Second condition relating to the standard approval in accordance with the plans. Third condition to control the use so that it's for storage use only, not for any other use within a B8 use. Fourth condition relates to restricting the hours of use so that the local residents will not be unduly disturbed. Fifth condition relates to external storage to ensure the impact on the character of the area. The sixth condition relates to lighting, which will ensure that there's no adverse impact on the character of the area or disturbance to neighbouring residential properties. Seventh condition relating to safeguarding existing trees and hedges to ensure that those trees and hedges are retained, and then the landscape scheme at condition 8 to ensure that there's greater mitigation to provide greater screening of the site. The ninth condition relates to the provision of parking and turning to ensure that that area that has been shown on the submitted plans is actually provided. 10th condition to provide cycle parking. And then the last condition, number 11, to ensure that the surface water is in fact piped via the existing system to ensure no flooding from the site. So therefore, based on those recommendations and conditions, it's recommended to grant consent. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Santa. Okay, are there any points to be raised by Highways or any relevant council officer?
Thank you. No.
Thank you for that. Okay, are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer or Highways?
Councillor Brookhimber, during the presentation, you spoke about a medical centre nearby. I wonder if that could go up on the screen and just to see how close within the vicinity of it. I fully agree there's got to be a lot of landscaping around there.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we'll start off from a distant view. That's the medical centre's here, and I'll zoom in. The medical centre's here. Access off the public highway here. Car park is here. Again, access off the public highway into the medical centre goes around here. Not sure if these photographs show, that's the car park. I think the Ordnance Survey plan is probably best. So medical centre being here, and then the car park is accessed here.
It's a sort of yes and no question. Do we see any impact with being so close to the medical centre? I'm just thinking noise and dropping things and possibly the difficulties the medical centre may have. Thank you.
To come back on that, Shanta.
Thank you. I think because of the distance from the medical centre and this site, and the fact that this is at a lower level, and also taking into consideration the activity that takes place within the adjacent industrial or commercial units, I can't imagine that there would be any noise and disturbance that would lead to any unacceptable any unacceptable impact on the users of the medical centre.
Are there any further technical questions? I now open the debate to members. Councillor Williams.
I'm happy to propose this application as it stands. I think the design looks very good. I don't think it will impact on the medical centre or the leisure centre at all. And I believe they've put solar panels on their roofs, which is great.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. You've proposed acceptance of that proposition. Is there a seconder? Councillor Kimber just got in front, I think. We've got a proposer and a seconder on the floor for acceptance. Any other comments or views wish to be expressed by the committee? No? Right, okay. Okay. If there's no more deliberation, the members are satisfied they've heard the entire presentation debate. I will now take a vote by a show of hands. All those in favour? For the benefit of those viewing from home, that's a unanimous decision, 7-4, and obviously therefore none against or no abstentions. Thank you for that. That concludes this particular item. And then the final item on the agenda is item 5C. Application PHOU. I'll just wait for PHOU 2023-05788, 84 Croft Road, Portland, DT5 2EP, to erect rear side single-storey extension. I invite Rob Pickett, the case officer, to introduce this item. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Bring forward application today for the erection of a rear and side single-storey extension and a small extension to an existing decking area at 84 Croft Road. The application is brought before committee as the red line area does include a small area of land which is Dorset Council owned. Just to locate you here, the application site is in Weston in Portland,
and is on the east side towards the south. And I'll just drop in further. The application site is just south of a small area of green space at the end of a cul-de-sac, with it being an end of terrace property and this being the rear with the extension coming off to the side and the rear. Key constraints on the site: the application site is within a defined development boundary. It's within the Portland Neighbourhood Plan area, and as I noted earlier, there is a small section of land which is under Dorset Council ownership. Just to be clear, it is a small section on the side boundary of the property, and it's roughly 1.3 metres deep by 7 metres long. You may be able to see that in the photo, but on the ground, there is a boundary wall which runs along the red line area, and that looks to be a well-established boundary treatment to the property. So just briefly, the existing and proposed elevations showing the side and rear extension, a wraparound form of extension to the property. It's approximately 3.7 metres high, 6.5 metres wide, and 4.1 metres long at the side. Moving along, the floor plans show the size of the extension, so there's existing decking area. This will be enlarged slightly outside of the extension, and it's to form an enlarged lounge area. Some photos of the site. This is the front of the property, the side of the property looking towards the rear, and the rear of the property looking to the northwest towards the green space. Further photos, the rear of the property looking at its relationship with the neighbouring property, number 86. You'll note there's a conservatory. And just a couple of other photos showing the relationship between the properties. There's a high degree of intervisibility amongst properties within this development. So just to move along, and apologies for the slightly wordy presentation, but principal development is acceptable. It's within the defined development boundary to an existing residential property. Visual amenity also considered to be acceptable in terms of design. The footprint is modest at the rear and it will utilise matching materials. It's not considered that there would be any impact on residential amenity. As I've noted, there's a high degree of intervisibility. The extension is single-storied, and there is a slight drop of land moving to the east, the southeast. No neighbour objections were received. Just touching on amenity, there is an acceptable degree of private amenity space left at the property, and would be commensurate with the size of the host dwelling. There is not considered to be any harm to highway safety, as the proposal is at the rear and there is no loss of off-street parking. In terms of property ownership, it is not considered that this would be an obstacle to granting consent. The area of land is somewhat distanced from the development area. The assets and property team at Dorset Council were consulted, however, no response was received at the time of this recommendation being filed. To summarise, where the material considerations and planning issues outlined are deemed to be acceptable, it is recommended that the application is granted approval, recommended, with commensurate conditions being standard 3-year commencement, matching materials, and the approved plans. And that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Rob. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer? And I open the debate to members. Anyone wishing to speak? Right, if there's no more deliberation and members are satisfied they have heard the entire presentation and debate, I will now seek a proposal. Oh, sorry, you wanted to make a technical question? Oh, right. Okay. Over to you, Councillor Kimber.
Way up this morning, I heard an interesting stat that more and more people are having to put extensions on their properties than ever before. And there was even more that the number of over 30-year-olds are still living in their, if you like, their normal home because of clearly a price of property. I'm happy to move this if that we accept this and go for it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. I was just going to seek a proposer. I assume that you are proposing. Yep. So proposed. As we've got a proposer on the floor, who would like to second? Councillor Sarah Conning. Okay. Any other speakers? Okay. If there's no more deliberation and members are satisfied they've heard the entire presentation debate, I will take a vote by show of hands. All those in favour? For the benefit of those viewing from home, that is a unanimous decision on behalf of the committee. 7 in favour. Told you it'd be. Right, members, we're on to item 6 on the agenda. Urgent items. I have no prior notification of any items of business which is considered to be urgent pursuant of section 100B4B of the Local Government Act 1972. And item 7 on the agenda, exempt business. I have no prior notification of any item viewed as likely to disclose exempt information within the meaning of paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A, the Local Government Act 1972 as amended. You'll be pleased to hear, members, that concludes the meeting. And thank you very much for your indulgence. And I promise to make up